Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Today I have Sarah Teague. This is Heather Teague's mother, and we've been planning on doing this live stream for the past 3 weeks, but all of us have had some circumstances going on in our life, but we're finally getting around to it. Today I just wanted to bring Heather Teague's mother on to share what she knows about what happened to her daughter back in August of 1995. So without further ado, I will allow Ms. Teague to introduce herself and tell who she is and tell the story of Heather. How are you doing today, Sarah?
Good afternoon, Isaac. Just blessed to be here.
Well, that's good. I know that we've spoken a lot over the phone behind the scenes regarding this case, and I'm going to be honest with you. I told you that upon doing research of Heather Teague, I didn't know how deep this thing went until speaking with you. So, can you share with the audience what you've encountered over the past 2 decades?
It's been almost 3 decades now, Isaac, but everybody keeps saying, this is going to be one of the largest political cover-ups in the tri-state history, and what a bizarre mystery this is. Well, this has been our life, for 28 years, 10 months, and a few days today. But it's the more I write and the more I look into this, I just discovered something last week that put another little piece to the puzzle. And like I was telling you a few minutes ago, what I know now is the only thing true about that entire day, and in fact, probably this entire search for Heather, is Heather's gone. I told Mrs. Dallum. Mrs. Dallum is the special prosecutor who's just been appointed to look into Heather's abduction after 28 years, almost 29 years, and I told her that I said, this search for Heather will break your heart. And I said, it will absolutely shatter your faith in law enforcement. It sure has mine. The week after, well, do we need to go back to who was the eyewitness and all that?
Yeah, just to give context, because I know that I've talked about Heather's story here, but just to give them a refresher, can you talk about where were you at when you learned when Heather disappeared back in
Okay, that's a good place to start. I don't remember what time it was. It was in the afternoon, but we got three. I was living in Dixon, Kentucky at the time. I just gotten back from Georgia a few months earlier and going through an absolute horrible divorce. And we got a phone call, and it was from Henderson Police Department. I didn't remember till years later that it was Henderson Police Department that called us instead of Kentucky State Police. But we got about three phone calls in a row, and they were saying, "Do you know where Heather is?" And we were like, "No." Well, hang on. Let me call you right back. So 3 different calls from Henderson Police Department came in just asking us, did we know where Heather was? Finally, on the third phone call, they said, well, Heather's left her car abandoned on Newburgh Beach. Well, I had never heard of Newburgh Beach, but we took off to Newburgh Beach. And when we got there was yellow police tapes all over everywhere. And it was the Kentucky State Police who who met us, and we were told that a man watching from across the river in Indiana through a telescope had seen a man 6 foot with dark bushy hair and a beard drag Heather into the woods. And I'm telling you, when I looked around and saw that empty lounge chair at the water's edge, it still just it haunts me to this day, just to know she was gone. And little by little, it turned out there was a red and white Bronco filmed on the beach not far from Heather's car. It had Sonny on the front license plate. 4 days passed before a sketch was done. The sketch is turned out identical to the man who was blamed and framed for this. His name was Marty Deal.
And we're about to get into Mr. Marty Gill or Dill, I'm sorry, and all of the characters of this case, because Marty Dill, it's important to note that he's deceased. He allegedly committed suicide back in 95. September, wasn't it?
It was on day. The composite sketch came out. I'll show you this. The composite sketch came out on day 4.
Let me see if I can pull you up. Let me see if I can change the layout here.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's take that down. Trying to play around here.
Right.
Let's see. That will do.
Okay. On day 4, a sketch was drawn. This is the composite sketch that was drawn on day 4. This is Marty Dill's 94 driver's license. If you could tell, it's, well, I have positive proof now. It was drawn from the driver's license. And this is Chris Below. This is Chris Below's body, and this is how Marty Dill looked the day that he got out of jail, July the 15th of 1995. And you can tell the body, the way the hands turn in. I mean,
it's identical.
The belly, absolutely identical to Chris Below.
And see, Marty Dill, he had his hair shaved bald.
A week after Marty's death, people started coming to me and saying Marty Dill was bald. Marty Dill had to have all of his hair and his beard cut off to be a custodian at Webster County Jail right there in Dixon. Police denied it. That they still have not admitted it. On July the 29th of this past year, I opened an audio, KSP audio, and learned that KSP has known all these years. Every time I would go into a meeting carrying this sketch, this laminated poster, they have laughed at me, literally mocked me. One day I was coming in for a meeting and I had this sketch with me, of course. And one of the, well, I know exactly who it was. He snickered and said it loudly enough that I could hear. Here she comes again with that sketch. So when I get there, that they're laughing and saying, like turning upside down and looking and just mocking, absolutely a mockery to everything, and saying, "Oh, well, he's got his hair pulled back in a ponytail there," and they knew, they knew. When I discovered that one audio, and of course it was mislabeled. It was labeled Tracy _DUI _reviewed. And I opened that up, and I guess I need to give you a little background on that. On July the 27th.
Yes.
On July the 27th, I was just so frustrated, from filing open records and appeals. And I had just gotten a reply to an appeal, and it popped up 403 forbidden. Oh, I had worked so hard. I stood up, walked down the hall, and I just cried out to God. And I said, please, God, which I do this every single day, but today there was a little more desperation in my heart. And I said, please, God, just let me have Heather back. These words came to me so plainly. Of course, I keep an ink pen either in my hand or nearby. And I wrote it down at noon on July the 27th. An undeniable truth is coming. They can no longer deny, and they will have no choice but to tell our family. So on July the 29th, when I opened that link, it and what it was as if all these audios, which I had pulled them up and gone through some of them. I've had the state police's files for, I guess, a little over 2 years now. It was as if that was the only file in my sight, the Tracy _ DUI. And I opened that, and there it was. Bill Polk, the deal's attorney, telling Kentucky State Police on day 4, Marty doesn't fit that description. Marty is shorter, he's lighter, and he does not have bushy hair and a beard.
That is day four into the investigation.
Yes.
This is early on.
And Bill Polk, the attorney, was telling them, listen, don't go in at, wait till daylight. Marty's in delicate shape. Don't go in. Do not surround him. What do? Their knowledge that Marty Deal was not the man that took Heather, they knew it right then, if they didn't know before, because like I say, the sketch was drawn from Deal's driver's license. They knew, and it didn't change their strategy. Nobody asked where Heather was. That was their chance to ask Marty, who was driving your Bronco that day? Where is Heather? That's what Bill Polk wanted to do. They surrounded him. They turned the lights off and on. They kept calling the residents. 2 shots were heard, Isaac, and yelling and an argument. And Marty Deal ended up dead. His whole death is suspicious because he wasn't the man that the eyewitness had described. And Susan DeWitt, a KSP, had told me in 2003 that Tim Wathall, the eyewitness, was right there at the trailer. Now, what business would he have being there that night?
Now, Tim, to give context to who we're talking about, Tim
Wathall.
He was the eyewitness who reported Heather being dragged into the woods by this man.
Right.
He was the one that was that witnessed this on the Indiana side back in August of '95.
He claims that he saw Heather being dragged into the woods by a man with 6 foot, 210 to 230 pounds, with dark bushy hair and a beard, wearing no shirt, cut off jeans, and tennis shoes. Knowing what I know now, he claims he called 911, but there's no record of any such call. It took us 12 years before we were given the time and location of the call he did make. Okay, by year 12, I had already pretty much proven that.
But can I add Heather's missing person poster? I've never seen this one before. Is this one still up to date?
I don't like that one. The picture on the far left is Heather's picture. I forgot the lady's name, but she did a age enhancement, and it looks more like it don't look like her at all. So I don't ever use that picture, but yeah, he after 12 years, we were given the time and location of the call, and that was at 1:15 to Indiana State Police when the abduction happened at 12 or 12:30. He was eating lunch. He claims he was eating lunch, and most of the files, the records in state police and the FBI files state that it was, between 12 and 12:30. So that means that he waited at least 45 minutes, if not 1 hour and 15 minutes, to make a call, period. And of course, now looking back, what was he doing for that length of time? Why would he wait at all when you see a girl being dragged into the woods at gunpoint by her hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the thing that devastated us the most is that on year 20, took us 20 years before we heard the actual call he made to Kentucky State Police. And in that call, he describes a totally different scenario of how Heather was taken. You know, he had told us in the public for 20 years how he saw a man standing at the edge of the woods. He called attention to his wife, telling his wife that, first of all, he had a hot one because she had just unbuttoned her bathing suit top. And then he sees a man standing at the edge of the woods. And what we had heard all these years is that the man had crept down slowly to where Heather lay, and he put his hand flat on her back while he whispered to her and was, something was shining in the sun, implicating a gun. And then he wrapped her hair around his wrist and jerked her and pulled her up. Okay, in this call, and you've listened to it, I'm sure. He says the man charged down to where Heather lay and jerked her up by the back of the hair of the head. The entire scenario of how Heather was taken, I had to ask the sergeant who was playing this call for us just to stop, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I could not believe. First of all, we were listening for the description that was in a call that was played for us in 2008, where the eyewitness is speaking to a female, and he's saying that the man either had dark bushy hair and a beard, or he wore a wig and mosquito netting. So the sergeant who played this call for us had already been searching for that call. This was in 2008 when we heard that call. Well, that call has not only disappeared, but the record of the meeting for that call is not right. And I have a dated picture to prove that. And the audio of the meeting has disappeared. And I know this is so complicated to even try to understand, but the KSP 41s, which is a list of the evidence, say that I'm referring now to the chain of custody of that call. The reel-to-reel recording of that call was kept in the Lieutenant David Osborne's desk for 3 months and 2 days. From August the 26th of 95 till November the 28th of 95, that reel-to-reel call that the witness made was kept in a locked desk. It was taken out of evidence and taken to a creative specialist by the name of Doug Crow. On August the 17th of 07, he kept it from September the 24th of 07 before we heard the wig and mosquito netting call on August the 27th of 2008. So there was not only no mention of a wig and mosquito netting in the call that we didn't hear for 20 years, but the entire scenario of how Heather was taken wasn't the same. And through the years, this eyewitness has made claims that the back of Marty Deal's head was blown away. He went to the morgue to positively identify Marty Deal as being the one that he saw taking Heather. There wasn't even an exit wound. It took me 4 years before Marty's mother and I met, and she told me there wasn't even an exit wound. On the 8th year, I got the actual autopsy report that confirms there wasn't even an exit wound. And in 2004, the eyewitness picked Chris Belo from a lineup 3 different times, right in front of Detective Scott Thomas from Ohio, who had come in and presented Chris Belo as a possible suspect. Chris Belo did live in Reed, right there on the beach. And even though in 2004, they all knew that Marty wasn't the man who did this, they knew it, because now I know they knew on day 4. Tim Walthall still maintained the man who took Heather was Marty Deal. It's as if this entire story that they've told us, the only thing true is Heather's gone. And of course, now we know. Isaac. Oh. Hey, what happened?
Hey, Sarah. My computer, it died, and I'm trying to get it back started so I can end up on StreamYard, but I'm listening to you.
Okay. So is it still everything's still being recorded, or just not the, you can't?
Yeah, everything is still being recorded. Everyone can still hear you.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, I didn't know. I thought you had done this on purpose, so I didn't know. And now I don't know where I was.
Oh, no. My computer, it just died, and as soon as I can, I'm gonna get back up there with you. But I just didn't want to leave you hanging, or didn't want you to think that I left you hanging up there.
No, I thought you had done it on purpose, just letting me tell the story. What was the last thing I just said?
We were talking about you were talking about the exit wound not being the same.
Right.
When they went and identified Marty Gill.
Okay.
That's the last thing that I heard.
Okay. Well, I think I just got through saying that the only thing true about that day is Heather's gone. Too. I don't. So where you want me to start back?
Just wherever you feel comfortable. It really doesn't matter.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It's been such a I guess rude awakening, harsh reality, however you want to put it, to continue to find out that not only did they know on day 4 that Marty wasn't the man who did this, just how on earth did they let me come in year after year after year with this sketch? And they literally laughed at me. They literally just mocked me. I was telling Isaac a few minutes ago how one lieutenant, he saw me coming in with that sketch, and he said it loud enough that I could hear, here she comes again with that sketch. And it's as if year after year, their words were rehearsed. Even every change of detective, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, they would say the same thing. There's nothing nefarious going on here. Marty Dill did this at 2 months. And this is alarming to realize that at 2 months, the lieutenant told me, he said, Miss Teague, go on with your life. He said, take Heather's pictures down. Marty Dill abducted Heather. Marty killed Heather. Marty killed himself, and he took his secrets to his grave. The only true part of that is Marty took his secrets to his grave. I don't believe Marty killed himself. There were 2 shots heard in an argument, according to the state police's files. Even the bullet that was retrieved from Marty Dill's skull, according to FBI files, cannot be proven as coming from that gun. There was he supposedly used a .22 caliber revolver, and from what I understand, a casing doesn't eject from a .22 revolver. There was a casing listed in the KSP 41 as being found on the floor. I guess the way that connects is that in 2005, after Chris Belo had became a suspect, the FBI came to my home on July the 15th of 2005. And their request was they wanted me to get an attorney to sue the Kentucky State Police Post 16. They wanted Heather's case to go federal. Well, looking back at the FBI files and the state police's files, even Heather's case was already federal because somebody was taken to the federal grand jury on September the 20th and again on September the 27th of 95, just a few weeks after Heather was taken. So I had to declare Heather legally deceased after the FBI realized that the attorney that I had, he had just gotten out of law school and he couldn't file a civil suit against the state police. So I had to declare Heather legally deceased to get the FBI files. In these FBI files, there were about 5 that caught my attention that I wanted explained to me. One was a totally different time and location of Heather's last known whereabouts. It was at 3 p.m., August the 26th, on a public boat ramp. Newburgh Beach is not a public boat ramp, but Hayes Boat Ramp is a public boat ramp. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, or in the wee hours of the morning, is where Heather had met James Hendricks, who was Henderson Police Department. He was a Henderson police officer at the time. And now we know she was seen at parties with him. The FBI stayed with me and our family for about 2.5 years. And on January the 30th of 2008, after the tape conversations I had made with Tim Wathall were turned into state police, the FBI was taken off Heather's case. Okay, on February the 18th of 2009, after the FBI had already been taken off Heather's case, Jerry Garner, the FBI who came in 2005 with Samantha Deegan, brought James Hendricks to my home. The entire conversation is recorded. I have a transcript of the meeting. And James Hendricks, is claiming that he saw Heather 3 weeks prior to her abduction. And I had already called John Nevels, Hendricks' boss, and Nevels had confirmed it was the night before. So this whole, I mean, how did an FBI agent bring another FBI agent who I learned after the meeting was his boss when they weren't even on Heather's case? This was not a professional meeting. How do things like this happen?
Hey, Sarah, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, I've had myself muted. Again, I'm sorry for leaving you up here hanging, but I was just allowing you to talk. I do want to chime in and mention that is there currently a petition that's going on to have Heather's FBI files released?
No, I've got the FBI files. I was given.
Public.
I had to declare her legally deceased to get their files, and then after that, they became public record. I have 300, almost 400 FBI files, and when I saw these, what I was talking about was there were 5 files that I wanted to know. You know, like one says Heather's abduction is strongly linked to drugs, prostitution, public corruption, and strip club in parentheses.
What do you think they mean when they say public corruption? Is that was it public or political corruption?
They said public corruption, and that's a very good point to make, Isaac, because when I called the FBI agent, it was Agent Paul Pape at the time in Owensboro. He's retired now. But when I called him and I said, could you please explain these files to me? Heather's last known whereabouts, a totally different time and location that we were told. The public corruption, drugs, prostitution. And then several files have WP program at the top right corner. And he said, Miss Teague, it will do you no good to bring those files here. He said they need to go to the office of the Inspector General in Washington, D.C., Public Corruption Department. So here we are, 28 years and 10 months later. Mrs. Ramsey Dallum, the special prosecutor, has been appointed to look into this search for Heather, and that's what they're addressing. I was told on May the 1st, 2 months from today, actually, that the higher-ups, I had reached the higher-ups, and Mrs. Ramsey Dallum had been appointed as special prosecutor. Okay, when she called me, and that's the only time I've ever heard from her so far, she let me know, it directed me to the Department of Criminal Investigation link, and specifically, she wanted me to address a formal complaint to the Public Corruption Department. I've got a sweet potato and some flatbread. I've got to go turn off. The timer went off.
No, you're good. You're good. So, guys, I'm going to be playing the 911 call, one of the 911 calls, which has since been publicly released. And this was coming from Tim Walthall. Tim Walthall. I can't say his last name correctly, but this was the gentleman that made the 911 call back in August of 1995. Hey, Sarah, I'm about to play one of the phone calls, the 911 calls that Tim made. Is that
Okay.
okay? Sorry about the advertisement. I'm going to have to do it on my phone because I don't want my computer to crash again. I'm going to have to get this figured out.
Okay, that's fine.
But yeah, here's the 911 call.
WALCHALL. State Police, Dispatch Davis. Yes, sir. I just called the Indiana State Police. I live in Newburgh, Indiana. And, I mean, I was sitting at the dinner table, we got to eating dinner, and I got a telescope. I live right on the river. And I scanned the beach, or straight across from the beach in the Lock Dam. And there was a girl on the left-hand side of the trees down here, and she was sunbathing, and she was laying face down, and she had her top undone, and she was just bathing. And I was looking back and forth across the beach. I told Karen, and I said, I just listened to her. I said, I'll just look at the beach. And about this time, a guy come running out of the trees on the left-hand side. He ran down and grabbed her by the back of the head of the hair and jerked her up. And she grabbed the towel, and he walked her up in the trees, up in the riverbank over here. And I've been watching now for 25 minutes, and I ain't seen her come back. And all of her stuff's still sitting down there on the beach. So where's she at on the beach?
Now, mind you, guys, he contacted. Let me ask Sarah. Before this phone call was made, he contacted the Indiana State Police, and then they redirected him to KSP. Is that correct?
All I know is that on the first interview, he says he had called Indiana State Police, which we were given the time and location, 12 years later. It was at 1:15 to Indiana State Police. Yes.
And then this phone call, which is been played numerous times for anybody that's followed the disappearance of Heather Teague. I told you, Sarah, that I've had a lot of questions regarding this phone call, especially Tim, Mr. Walthall. I can't say his name right, but it's just very peculiar how the 911 caller is describing what happened.
Well, the thing is, there was not an official 911 call. He never called for help. That was disputed in the August 30th issue of the Gleaner. It says the witness claims he called 911, but there's no record of any such call. See, had he called 911, he living in Newburgh, Indiana, it would have gone straight to Warwick County Sheriff's Department. So he did not call for help. He waits 45 minutes to 1 hour and 15 minutes to call straight through to Indiana State Police. And in that call,
another discrepancy in this case. Why was there such a long period between the
right
calls, allegedly?
And I don't know if you caught it or not, but when he says, I've been waiting 25 minutes for her to come back. See,
who waits 25 minutes after just seeing a young woman being dragged into the forest to call?
And he said one of what the parts of his story was that he thought it was her boyfriend playing a joke.
Right.
Well, her boyfriend, which the guy she was seeing at the time, was supposed to have met her at noon. And he told her to not undo her bathing suit top, which is another really weird thing. But he didn't show up, but he was a drug dealer. So my theory is that the reason the Kentucky State Police was already there, Tim Walthall was watching Heather for a reason, and Heather disappeared on their watch. She literally disappeared on their watch. Why else would there be such panic? The Henderson Police Department calling us just in a state of panic. Where is Heather? Do you know where Heather is? And then finally they let us know, even though they already knew that Heather had been seen by this witness from across the river through a telescope. Oh well, she left her car abandoned on Newburgh Beach. That's what we were told. This whole, I mean, for them to have created a call in 2007 to be played for us in 2008 with a description of a wig and mosquito netting when they all knew. See, now, as of July the 29th of last year, I know they knew on day 4 that Marty Deal was not the man who did this. And that brings up this Christopher Below character because he's out of prison now. And from what his girlfriend that she had dated him 3 months says, he's right back at it. But it doesn't matter to the state police. It doesn't matter to the state police that Tim Wathall said the back of Marty's head was blown away when there wasn't an exit wound. It doesn't matter to them that, yes.
This is Chris Below. Now, soon after Heather disappeared, he went to Ohio and he was eventually charged with murder.
A girl named Catherine Fetzer, but there's 4 or 5 other young ladies missing, and they all could pass for Heather's sister. Catherine Fetzer, do you have a picture of her?
Let me see if I can pull her up real quick.
I mean, these girls were all short, long dark hair, and green eyes. And he's living with a lady right now with dark hair and green eyes.
So there's a common denominator. Is this... I'm not sure if this is the right person, but is this her?
That's her. That's
Okay.
her.
So
And
her, Heather, and these other young women always they've shared common characteristics.
Well, she could pass for Heather's sister. Look at her.
Yeah, they look very similar. Let me see if I can find another picture. I don't want to be showing people that that are not a part of it. Let's see. But yeah, this Chris Below guy is the one that needs to be looked at more because he's out of jail. He moved to North Carolina and changed his name. Is that correct?
From what I understand, and I just pulled him up yesterday, it's John C. Bellows. Yes.
John C. Bellows.
He completely, and the state police are aware of this. 2 summers ago, Lori Phillips, the lady that you and I both have met, that dated Chris Below for 3 months.
Now here's another picture of Chris Below.
Right. Do you have the one now where he's like, I mean, he's changed his looks so much. He looks like a professor now. He's got a little tie on and a little shirt, sweater, glasses. He actually looks like a preacher or a professor.
Well, what's his name again?
His profile picture. John C. Bellows.
See if I can pull him out. John C. Bellows.
But there's a missing girl near where he used to live. And it like I was saying 2 summers ago, Lori's daughter called in to say that she was scared to death because her mother was about to leave town with this man. And she told Stephanie Sylvie, she used to be with Channel 14, and Stephanie reported it to the state police. It hasn't made any difference. They still maintain Marty Deal was the one who did it, even though they know better.
I'm convinced that these put KSP, as I told you, one of the main motivations that they have to continue with the narrative they're pushing, they don't want to seem incompetent. That's one of the reasons.
Oh, it's way beyond incompetence, Isaac.
It's a cover.
I mean, for them to...
It's a cover.
I mean, I've got the purchase order now that confirms that Marty Deal's sketch was drawn on July the 14th of 94. The artist who did this needs to be questioned, as well as the 4 officers who were in the room with us in 2008 when the call with Wathall saying to a female, everything about the call that we heard in 2008 is nothing like what we didn't hear for 20 years. And I mean, that's why I'm putting together this packet for Judge Shepard and Judge Weitzel, because the state police actually stood in front of Judge Shepard in 2017 denying the existence of the call that we heard in 2008 with the wig and mosquito netting. And he's going to be really interested to find out that not only has the call disappeared, but the audio of the meeting of the call has disappeared. And this is upon open records and open records appeals. My last Freedom of Information appeal, this is the FOIA, to the FBI was concerned in this call. So you've got a record of the meeting the day that we were played the call. It's got the wrong date on it. It's got March the 27th of 08. Okay, I have a dated picture of Ruby, hush. I got a little chihuahua. A dated picture, August the 27th of 2008, which that's the day after Heather's 13-year anniversary. But I have a dated picture to prove they've even got the date wrong on that file, on the record. So you've got a call with a female with him saying wig and mosquito netting that's disappeared. Let me put her up here. Come here.
No, you're good.
Come here. I burned my flatbread.
Oh, no.
I had a sweet potato cooking, and I thought, well, as long as I'm cooking a sweet potato, I make this, which is all over the internet now, the cottage cheese and egg flatbread. It's the high protein flatbread. So I decided I would cook them at the same time, and I burned my flatbread, but I can make another one. It's no big deal.
I'm sorry I made you burn your flatbread.
Well, you did. It's okay.
I ruined your lunch.
Yes, you did. It's a little thing. That's what I told Mrs. Dallum, I said that this will it will break her heart, because, I mean, nobody's ever heard of anything like this before.
I never heard of it. And just to give my audience some context between me and Sarah's relationship, see, I actually reached out to her over a year ago because I recently moved back to Kentucky. As many of my audience knows, I came from Florida, and I came across Heather's case. So I reached out to Sarah on Facebook, and I just left it alone because I didn't receive any reply back until a year later. And lo and behold, here we are now. So,
well, I'm a firm believer it's all in God's perfect timing, because,
yes,
like I said, I just discovered the audio, the mislabeled audio last July the 29th. That
it seems like information is constantly coming out over decades of cover-ups and lies.
And all I want is Heather back. I just keep telling them, even now, Isaac, that, of course, in 2008, when I had to declare Heather legally deceased.
That must have been hard.
Oh.
I can only imagine what that was like. Any parent that has to legally declare their child as deceased, that's heart-wrenching.
Well, I couldn't even look at the certificate for years, and it was only then that I had to pull it out to look at it, and it's almost like this is a game for them, to have, like you said, to declare your child legally deceased when you're still hearing she's been fed to the hogs, she's been sold, she's been dragged behind a truck.
All alive. These morbid things,
just horrible things. And had they asked Marty Deal on day 4, as soon as they found out that Marty was not the man that the eyewitness described, wouldn't you think their first thing would be to ask him where Heather was?
Yeah.
We could have had her back on day 4. As soon as Bill Polk, the attorney, told the state police that Marty didn't fit that description, it wasn't that he just didn't have dark bushy hair and the beard. Just like I had brought to him years and years and years. Marty was 5'10" or 5'8", 180 pounds. He wasn't even the same height or weight. And as you can tell, he didn't have a beer belly. He didn't have a pot belly.
No.
And that was the first thing the eyewitness says on his first interview, is that he was a big old guy with a kind of a beer pouch. It wasn't Marty Deal. And to know that they
Oh, it looks like you froze.
Looking for Heather.
Oh, okay, never mind. I think you're breaking up a little bit, Sarah. I'm gonna take you, if you can hear me, Sarah, I'm gonna take you down and then just come back up, because usually that's what fixes the issue. Let me see. I'm gonna add you again.
Okay.
All right. It looks like it resolved itself.
Yeah. Anyway, Isaac, for them, I just call it's a shame and a disgrace to all that we hold precious.
And if this is done to Heather's case, and this happened back in 95, you guys, just imagine what other cases KSP has messed up, or intentionally or unintentionally, negligent at best, which I don't think this case, it goes further than just negligence. Would you agree, Sarah?
It absolutely sometimes makes me just shake, because I realize, and I keep trying to tell all the investigators. I even shared the July 27th thing with Lieutenant Pryor. There's a much bigger picture going on here. And it's not just that such evil and corruptness, every time that they were doing something deceitful, there was, where is Heather? Matthew 10:26, claiming God's word that what's hidden will be revealed and what's covered will be uncovered, was being, I've got lavender ribbons all over the place, and when my pastor's wife came to me in 2003, this was the same year that somebody was using Heather's social security number, posing as my daughter Holly.
I remember you telling me about that.
Yes, this is another huge part of this bigger picture. She had a word from God that said, when this is all said and done, it will be a wonder to all mankind. And people will be saying, that mother, you stand and declare, to God be the glory. See, my daughter Holly got a phone call in the middle of the night in 2002, and we reported it to the state police and to the FBI for a trace. We thought it was Heather, the only lead we've ever had that she could be alive. And this was 7 years into Heather being gone. This was also the year of the big drug bust with Paul Lloyd, Mike Herron, and Eddie Jones. Now, Eddie Jones is Tim Wathall's attorney. So wow. that was the same year of the bust, and the same year that 20 years later, I get the state police's files and find a record where Agent Glenn Wildy with the FBI had contacted state police to say, check with the neighbors. Somebody's using Heather's social security number. And see, Heather's driver's license, her social security card, none of that was found on the beach. They brought me a purse, and it was a purse that she didn't even carry. And her wallet, none of that was in there. So was Heather supposed to go into a witness protection program?
That leads me into, go ahead.
Why would WP program be at the top right corner of the file of her last known whereabouts as being the same place that she met a Henderson police officer the morning of? And then that they deny it. The FBI brings him to my home after they're not even on the case. I mean, there's so many questions that just do not add up, and when you make these connections, I believe Heather disappeared on his watch. I believe he was watching her for a reason. And that's the reason he waited an hour and 15 minutes before he called Indiana State Police. That's the reason they all panicked. That's the reason you don't wait 4 days to do a sketch.
No.
None of this is even heard of. What they have done it's just an absolute shame and a disgrace. I mean, Heather didn't matter, Isaac. She was a street person. And I didn't even have a car at this time. We were the least of these. We were looked down on. I heard Tim Wathall, and I found the little note that I had written on and I'm thinking it was July the 27th of all days in 97. I've got to find it again, but I had stood right next to him, and I heard him, and I thought he was my hero. He would show up at Post 16 every time I got there. This businessman with businesses in South America, running a president of 4-Star Fabricators in Petersburg, Indiana. He would just be there, and I thought he was my hero. I stood right next to him in 97, and I heard him laugh at how easily his workers in South America could be replaced when they fall off of handmade elevators because they work for pennies. Now that's a human life. Just
Yeah,
total disregard for human life.
disgusting, in
Well,
my
it just shows true colors.
Sarah, let me ask you. I know that I've asked you this before, and it's a hard question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But in your heart, do you believe that there is a possibility that Heather is alive today, and that she faked her disappearance back in 1995 for whatever reason? Maybe she had to. She was a witness. She was working with police.
Well, there was something going on too with this man that I was seeing, but that's for another show. Isaac, when I'm putting our story together and when I'm submitting evidence to the Department of Criminal Investigation, that's the one thing that it just haunts me because in 2002 and 2003 when the FBI was telling the state police to look at neighbors, by us reporting that call when Holly thought that was Heather, did we lead them straight to her? See, that's the thing that gets me. Was she alive? Did we lead the state police and the FBI to her? Because, as incompetent, they're not incompetent. Everything they've done has been with intent and purpose. So for Detective Rasco to have gotten this lead from Glenn Wildy, the FBI, that somebody was using Heather's social, and for it to end up that this girl living at 433 Gray Stable Lane in Newport, Kentucky, with a Tammy Storch, how could they not know that Holly had just received a phone call and she lived in Madisonville, Kentucky with 2 babies? They dropped the ball, allegedly. I don't know. How could any agency be that incompetent? How could they not know that a call had just been reported to them and to the FBI for a trace because we thought that was Heather? The same year, Isaac. There's no way that they're that incompetent. And as soon as I got the file, I called Agent Wildy, of course, and he's retired, but a lady by the name of Elizabeth Hensley returned my call. She and I kept talking for months. Then all of a sudden, I get a message from a Mandy Corrigan with the FBI saying the state police took Elizabeth Hensley off this case. Why would they take this agent off this only lead we've ever had that Heather's could be alive? And worse than anything, it's been since September the 22nd of 22 that I started messaging Sergeant Whitaker and then the new lieutenant, asking them, begging them, could you just explain to me why you would take Elizabeth Hensley off this case when that's the only lead we've ever had? Heather's alive. It makes me think there's more to it. And they don't even reply. I get nothing. Why did they take her off this one lead? They won't even send me an email to acknowledge that they've received my concern. Almost 2 years later. How heartless is that?
It
that
is.
They won't even explain that to me.
They're putting you by the wayside, it seems like. And I don't know why they wouldn't be able to answer a straightforward question like that, probably because they know the answer that they will give is going to be incriminating from my guess.
Absolutely. That right there is
Well,
what
I don't understand how they can overlook and just dismiss it.
because they can, because I don't have an attorney. I don't have anybody legally to stand beside me. That's why I said that God's army, and it goes back to Allison Goodman's word from God. When this is all said and done, it will be a wonder to all mankind.
It's going to be a justice for a lot of people, not only Heather, but the ones that unfortunately have or may have unfortunately followed in her footsteps.
Right. And, it took them 27 years to send in Heather's bathing suit bottoms. Even after in 2005, when Detective Scott Thomas came to Post 16, see, they found the evidence that the FBI had given to state police.
They never did find her wallet or anything, did they?
Pardon me?
They never did find her wallet? I know you said that they gave you a purse, but it wasn't Heather's.
Well, it may have been Heather's. It was in her car, but it wasn't the purse she carried. And no, her driver's license, her Social Security card, none of that's ever been found.
Wow.
And see, if Heather were to have staged her own abduction,
she would have taken those things with her.
How could she ever come home since Marty Deal ended up dead? She would be inadvertently, and whoever helped her
be complicit of.
Yeah, he's dead. So yeah.
And a dead man tells no tales. And that's why, as what many people like to say, a dead man tells no tales. That's why the state police want to pin it on someone that they know is not going to be here to speak for themselves.
Well, he did take secrets to his grave that there's absolutely no doubt. Number one, he knew his face had been put on the composite sketch. He knew that just because his Bronco was there, he was being blamed for the entire day. He also knew that his brother-in-law, who had been known to borrow the Bronco, was framing him too. But I think it goes a lot deeper than just a random abduction. It was not a random abduction at all. At all. And if Heather was a confidential informant, who knows who she knew? Did she know Tim Wathall? Did she have something on one of these cops like James Hendricks? Of course, if you've looked him up, he pretty much retired at age 50 because he was a skilled predator operating a pornography ring in every. He was at Bluegrass, Arkansas pornography ring when Jerry Garner brought him to my home February the 18th of 2009. Bluegrass, Arkansas. He went on to Washington, D.C., where he was head of pornography. And he got pretty much slapped on the wrist because 8 women came forward. He got in trouble for sexual harassment. So at age 50...
Did he admit to it?
James Hendricks is retired now from the FBI.
Okay. Did he admit to it, though, or was he...
Well, pretty much. I mean, he didn't go to jail or anything, but he took an early retirement. So what does that tell you?
Well, yeah, true. I'm just going to go ahead and dip out before shit hits the fan. You know what I mean?
But Jerry Garner, the FBI, knew what James Hendricks was going to tell me that day. And he had already let me know that it was the night before. And so did his boss, John Nevels.
Wow.
Like I said, this entire story is... the only thing true about it is Heather's gone.
Some way, somehow, she left that beach in August of 1995.
And that there's been a lead where her remains are, and for absolutely over 6 months now, and the state police has not even responded. And I even asked them for help for that.
Where they? Do you know where they're claiming Heather's remains were?
Oh, the lead came to me. Yes, it's a very credible lead. It's at 7871. They call it the Bottoms, and it's exactly where this person came forward to say that she was run over, and that's where her remains are buried. But like I say, I can't even get a message.
Over?
Pardon me?
She was ran over. Is that what they said?
that's probably the most credible lead that I've had. Is that in 1998, this Mike Shelton, the brother-in-law, was positively heard saying that Heather was run over when she jumped out of the car. And
Why would she
Heather,
be jumping out of the car?
she would have jumped out of the vehicle trying to get away from these people. Supposedly there was the Bronco was involved in a red Chevette. Heather was seen in a red Chevette between 2:30 and 3 o'clock that afternoon, being held by her hair still. This was reported to the state police. And so in 1998, when we got this lead that, the brother-in-law was heard saying Heather it was an accident. They were just going to teach her a lesson, I guess, from being a confidential informant. And she jumped out of the vehicle and was run over.
Wow.
But that goes along with Heather's. She left a little tape, and in the little cassette tape, she's driving, and she's listening to Bob Seger playing "Running Against the Wind," and she says, "I had this dream," and she said, "In this dream," she said, "the sun was shining down on a dirt road, which that's Newburgh Beach," and she said, "I went off the MFer." She said, "I knew I wasn't there anymore." And then I had a dream the night that this happened. And in my dream, she was in a barn, or I was in a barn, and I brushed, there was like hay or straw. And I looked up at somebody and I said, "I found my baby." And she was in a burlap bag, and her eyes were still open, and her hair was all muddy or bloody.
Dear God.
And so I thought that when I heard the lead that she was run over, it went right along with her dream and my dream.
Do you think that was God's way of hinting and talking to you?
I do, because Heather wrote, "And I am a poster child," months before she was. And on the third week, Isaac, of looking for Heather, a box was brought back to me that I had left in the attic where we used to live. And in the bottom of this box was a journal dated. I had started it to Heather when she was 23 months old. There was an entry dated August the 25th of 1974. And I wrote, "I'm so afraid a big man will someday take my Heather away." On August the 26th, I missed it by one day, when she was 23 years old. That's what we were told had happened. That's another reason that I know there's such a bigger picture here. Just a bigger picture, than this may be one of the largest political cover-ups in the tri-state history, as I'm being told. And I know it's a bizarre mystery, but
Yes.
still.
It's old, but I mean, that's why I choose to talk about these cases on my platform, because you see, right now everyone is focused on a little autistic boy who is missing out of Nashville, Hendersonville, Tennessee, and 4 college students that lost their lives in late 2022. But it's also important to focus on cases such as Heather, because these are the cases that deserve attention the most. The cold cases, the cases that don't get talked about enough or just get swept underneath the rug. These people, they deserve justice. Sarah, Heather's mother, she's been searching for answers, as you heard her say. She just wants to bring her baby back. She just wants to find out what happened. And I can only imagine it going on 3 decades without absolutely any answers but confusion and a whirlwind of madness for you. My heart goes out to you.
Thank you, Isaac.
Can you, Sarah, who was Heather? Who was Heather Teague? What did she like to do? What did she enjoy doing in her time?
She was a shy little girl. When she was little, she was my little shadow. Everywhere I went, she was right there beside me. I used to sit up and sew at night, and she'd be right there beside me. And we used to sing this song of "Wherever wherever we go, whatever we do, we'll always go through it together. And on days when I think she's still out there, and she can't come home, I'm wondering if she's writing just like I am. And I know that for her to know that it would be, she and I would be feeling the same feelings, but that love, there's a bond. I was literally born the day that Heather was born. And she's everything that I never was. She could work. She could stand up in front of a crowd, which I have no choice but to do that now. But she could work a chemistry problem all the way across the board, and just her writings are just absolutely prophetic. It's like her writings are what I'm living through. She wrote, "Beside intolerant faces I stand, holding heart and soul in hand, reaching for somebody to remember, to comprehend my desperation, my struggle." And then she says, "Is there anything left that's pure? I know addicts of hypocrisy, mockery, the drug of choice. Pity spit discriminately is still prejudice. Call out to all the homeless people. Aren't they people without a home?" That tells you who Heather is. And Heather confronted a judge and a strip club owner about underage girls and prostitution. Could anybody have been more brave than that? And either way, she sacrificed her life standing up for something she believed in. That's who Heather is.
I have myself muted. It sounded like that Heather was a humanitarian and she wanted the best for other people. Is that a fair statement to say?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And like what you mentioned, with her confronting the conflict, these allegations, that could have very well made her a target. So in the event that this entire story of her getting snatched up in the woods is a fabricated hoax on behalf of KSP, either way, she lost her life.
Right. Right. If she did stage her abduction and she pulled a trick on them, knowing that she was being watched and she was supposed to come back, and now she can't because of, or if they were going to teach her a lesson for being a confidential informant and she was accidentally run over. Either way, yes, we were looked down on as the least of these. You think Natalie Holloway's mother would have to be filing open records and FOIAs just to get answers that they already know? I mean, they knew on day 4 that Marty Deal wasn't the man, and they didn't even ask him about Heather. We could have had her back on day 4.
It sounds to me that that man was almost pushed, or he wasn't almost. I need to stop using adjectives. He was pushed into taking his own life. Maybe he had other things going on with drug rings, but the police were trying to frame him for what happened to Heather, so much so that he
Or the
imploded.
uncle, I mean, even Marty's mother thinks her own brother killed him. I mean, they didn't check Ernie Green, the uncle's, fingerprint. They didn't check it for gunshot residue, gunpowder residue. They didn't even check Marty Deal's for gunpowder residue. And I've got pictures from the inside of the trailer. He was shot at an angle.
Okay, so it was like that.
At an angle, like down. Instead of like this, it was at an angle.
And see, I'm not trying to be graphic to anybody in the audience. Trigger warning if you need it. But usually, if a person wants to commit suicide in that way, they would usually go through the mouth, or like what Sarah said, they would aim up.
Mm-hmm.
They
Well,
would aim down.
and the state police have even the suicide note they've not told the truth about. I mean, there's not hardly one part of this that I've not had to discover that's just not true. I mean, I'm like, why? why would you? It's written in their own investigative report. A total outright untruth about that suicide note. I mean, even that's a lie.
Do you know if there's any pictures of the note on the internet?
Oh yeah, no, it's not on the internet, but I've got all that, Isaac. It will just shock you to the core.
After this live stream ends, could you email me those
Yeah, I
so
will.
I can take a look at them myself? And it's up to you whether we want to. Do you think that we can release that on the
Oh
internet?
yeah. Well, I mean, what it is,
Because I
they're
know you're talking to
yeah,
investigators behind the scenes. So
their investigative. No, I've put this out there everywhere. Their investigative report claims that he left a note saying, I'm not gonna do 20 to life. Okay, the night of Marty Deal's death, this lieutenant called us to post 16. It had been storming, and he said Marty Deal just killed himself, and he yelled out, I'm not gonna do 10 to 20. Okay, the next morning I go in to post 16 and I'm all excited. Well, 10 to 20 is kidnapping, not murder. Well, he
yeah,
changed it to no, he yelled out, I'm not going to do 20 to life. He didn't yell out anything, but they wrote it in the investigative report that he had wrote that in the suicide note. Okay, so Chip and I go to post 16 one day and I said, I'd like to see the suicide note. Okay, Marty's mom had already told me on year 4 that all it said was, please forgive me. I am sorry. But let me tell you about this suicide note. It's written in block letters, printed in capital letters. Please forgive me. I am sorry. And then he signs his name, his signature in cursive. Okay. And of course, I've got the state police's files now, and that's not what the suicide note, that's all it said was, please forgive me. I'm sorry, written in block letters. And then he signs his name. So I've got their own investigative report that proves without a doubt they used what David Osborne told as part of the story. On day 5 now, they were already creating stories.
it's a version.
Oh my goodness.
It's just so many versions, and that's it's a version. And what people they always like to say about a version is it's coming from somebody else, so you have to depend on what the other person is saying is true.
And for them to write it in their own investigative report,
That's
or
bold.
to even be contradicted in their own report. I mean, see that they made a report after the fact when they found the suicide note, which they already knew that when they created the investigative report. But even their reports contradict their own reports. That's what's, and when I got the report, their files back, 2,000 pages. I didn't do this on my own. I've had 5 people looking into these reports, going through 2,000 pages with me. And I mean, the things that we have found out is just, like I say, there's nothing true about what they've told us happened that day, except Heather is gone.
It's just
Well, it's just a shame and a disgrace what they've done. And now they're going to be held accountable. I mean, it's not, I'm told this has never been done before. A mother presenting the evidence that leads to the Department of Criminal Investigation being contacted and a special prosecutor being appointed.
that's the thing about this case, guys. It's reached the higher ups, and I would say it's safe for me to say the FBI, basically.
Well, no, this is the Department of Criminal Investigations in Frankfurt. See, but you're right, because the FBI, like Heather's bathing suit bottoms, after 27 years, they were sent in, and only after a threat of a petition and hundreds of phone calls from my church saying, how dare the state police tell a mother that her daughter was raped in this area. And guess who found the bathing suit bottoms? Tim Wathall and this lieutenant. They're the ones that found Heather's bathing suit bottoms. But how dare that they tell a family this and not even send them in after 27 years? And even the DNA, it was sent to a lab in Florida on December the 5th of 2022.
And they told you that the DNA was going to be destroyed at the lab in Florida.
Yeah, 9 months into it, the lab had already started testing, and the lab had requested more funding, according to an email from Lieutenant Pryor. Okay, 11 months into it, the FBI tells the state police that the testing that was being done in Florida would ruin the evidence, and this Sergeant Whitaker had contacted the central lab in Frankfurt to retrieve the evidence. I called the Kentucky lab in Kentucky, in Frankfurt, spoke to a lady by the name of Marcy Atkins. She said they've not even heard from the state police since 2007.
Wow.
Another totally made up, and that was the last thing my daughter wore and the last thing that she held on to.
And they sat on this information for years, for
27 years. And now I don't even know where they are. I can't get a straight answer to, have they been retrieved from Florida? Of course, the lady in Florida, you can imagine, she was absolutely furious because I called her, and then I sent her the email showing that the FBI had told the state police that their lab would ruin the evidence. After 11 months of testing, there was only one test, touch DNA. So they've even destroyed the DNA that's on that bathing suit bottoms because they knew it would not be Marty Deal. They knew without a doubt that's just common sense. I'm not making any accusations. They knew. They knew that Marty Deal did not take those bathing suit bottoms off Heather. They knew it.
And see, the most disturbing thing about that piece of information is usually with any missing person case, the first 72 hours is crucial, and that's
24 to 48 hours. Is crucial. 24 to 48 hours, and they wait 4 days to do a sketch.
And by then, DNA starts to deteriorate already off of anything.
Yeah.
So, and they waited so long.
27 years. 27 years, Isaac.
Unacceptable.
And you would think at 10 years, when the FBI came in and found the evidence that they had given the state police and they didn't send it in after 10 years, and the FBI was telling me to sue the state police, you would think that they would remember Heather's bathing suit bottoms then, 10 years into it. It was all done with purpose and intent, and they must be held accountable. And all I've asked, I want every officer who has looked me in the eyes and laughed at me and mocked me and lied to me, I want to look them in the eyes. Those 4 officers that were in the room when that made-up call was played, I want them to look me in the eye, and I want their hearts and their souls to be changed. I want them to be sorry. I want them to literally fall on their face just to be sorry for what they've done to our family. And then I want Heather's life-size portrait hung at post 16 as a reminder to every officer from here on out, you don't do a family like this. You're protecting a drug ring and a prostitution ring. You do notice that they're dealing with public corruption.
Yep.
The drugs and prostitution's not even being mentioned.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've always thought is peculiar because that's one thing that they just want to skim over. They don't even want to touch on that.
They're not going to, they're not addressing that at all. But the same thing happened in 2008, when I got the FBI files. I was directed then to go to the office of the Inspector General, to the Public Corruption Department. So what does public corruption mean?
My guess is it has to do with local leaders. It's just my guess, but politics plays a factor in it too.
Right.
There's one thing that leads me into the next question that I have. You asked me about the the Democratic Party plays a factor into this case.
Well, Samantha Deegan, who was the victim's advocate that came in with Jerry Garner, July the 15th of 2005 and stayed with us until 2000.
I'm going to be getting some more coffee. I'll step away for 1 second, but you can continue talking.
Okay. The FBI, Samantha Deegan was an advocate that came in with Jerry Garner in 2005 and stayed with us till 2008 when the state police took him off the case. She called me in 2008. She had become an FBI agent at the time. But by 2008, she had already become an FBI agent. She tried to call me at home, and I had just gotten a cell phone, and it was going straight to voicemail. But she and I were messaging on Gmail, and so the call never would go through. And she gave me her phone number to the Milwaukee office where she was the FBI agent, and she asked me to call her on Monday morning. This was on a Friday night. I called Samantha Deegan in Milwaukee. She said, Sarah, she said, I need to tell you what Jerry and I learned when we were there with you. She said, don't ask any questions, but Heather was hired by the Democratic Party. And she also said, let's put Heather's information in 5 files. Let's say she was accidentally run over. She was sold. She was put in a well. She was raped. She was fed to the hogs. She said, what about the WITSEC program? And I said, what is that? And she said, witness protection. But she told me to not ask any questions. And not only that, but she knew she was being fired. This was her last thing. She knew she was being recorded at the Milwaukee office that morning when I called her. She knew that, and she really was fired. I don't know that it had anything to do with Heather, but she was fired.
She probably told you that information because she knew she was on her way out, but she wanted to get that one last cryptic detail, a clue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing, I guess, that I found, another thing that I found alarming is the interview. There's audio files and there's paper files, in the state police's files. In the audio file where Detective Rasco is talking to Jerry Garner, the FBI man, you would think that they would say, we really need to find Heather. Where is Heather? And Jerry, the FBI, you would think that he would say, well, her abduction was strongly linked to drugs, prostitution, and public corruption in a strip club. None of that was mentioned, Isaac. Not one word in this interview with Jerry Garner, the FBI man, and the KSP. Jerry Garner is saying, she tracked me down to the college where I worked, and she's a nuisance. Talking about me, that they're talking about me, how I tracked him down and how I was relentless and I wouldn't stop, instead of addressing the issues that I had to declare Heather legally deceased to find out. I mean, I had to declare her legally deceased, and here I get their FBI files, and there's so many redactions, that they give me these files. And then when I ask questions about the files, I'm sent to Washington, D.C. I still don't have answers after 28 years and 10 months.
Sarah, do you know, and I hope I don't take offense by me asking this question, but was Heather involved? Did she like to go to clubs and hang out at these places where this alleged drug trading was happening?
Yeah. She worked third shift, and she and her friends would go to a place called the Sportsman's Club Bar and Algonquins, just different places to play pool and everything. Yeah.
Okay, so it's possible that she witnessed what was going on.
Well, she was, if she was a confidential informant, she was right there with James Hendricks wherever he went, whatever he knew. I'm not so sure that she didn't find out something about him. Knowing that he was Henderson police then when she was seen with him at parties. And of course she had in her car, she had a big police sign over her windshield. Okay. I didn't know. I had no idea. I was so caught up in my own mess at the time. I didn't know that she was working for the cops. I didn't know.
You didn't know that she had a big police flag or flyer?
Didn't know that at all. I saw her on Thursday before this happened on Saturday, and she had pretty much taken all of her things out of her dad's house. She and the stepmom got into it, and I knew things were in a mess. I knew I knew she was troubled. I was troubled. It was
It was a
just
hard time in your life,
it was really a yeah.
with
But I
you and
saw her on Thursday, and this happened on Saturday.
well,
I think this has been a really good. I've really put this stuff out here. I'm very thankful for this.
no, I'm glad that you have. I've just let you
This
take
was
over.
good. This was good. I was able to put out exactly what needs to be put out, and
I hope that you find it therapeutic just
this
by
is good. This well, I'm just praying that the right people will watch this, hear this, and number one, if I need an attorney, one will reach out to me. I do have one out of I think 9 or 10 that I've contacted that is intrigued. He said he was intrigued, but I haven't heard anything back from him. I keep sending him, information, and of course, my good friend, he just Chip Adams. He can't. He would if he could. He just can't. He's suffered a family tragedy, and I don't know that he won't step up on board. I don't know that still, but at this point in time, I don't have anybody legally to stand up with me. But I'm hoping after this, if I'm supposed to, I mean, maybe
you still haven't heard back from the agent that you were talking to that said that they would be getting back to you.
I haven't heard anything from her. No, I haven't heard anything. It's been 2 months today. But like I told her, that this thing will break your heart, and she's got her hands full. I mean, she's young. As soon as I looked her up and I saw how young she was, I immediately wrote to her and I said, Miss Dallum, this thing is going to break your heart.
It's going to shatter your faith.
It will shatter your faith in law enforcement, because for them to wear those badges and those shiny black shoes and kick this mother around like they have, I mean, I'm telling you.
And it's a shame because you would think that the same people that wear the badges and the shiny shoes are here to protect and serve the people. But
well, we've had one, Sergeant Jason Pagan. He's the one that stepped up and played that call for us, and he was immediately taken off Heather's case. He took an early retirement also because
that's the weird thing about this case. It seems like anybody that wants to come out and attempt to shine light on the truth immediately, suspiciously retires or gets fired or gets silenced.
Well, you don't wait 20 years. You don't keep a family waiting 20 years to hear a call. I mean, Judge Shepard looked at when we won that small settlement in 2017 because of open records appeals. He looked at Detective Weber with state police, and he said, "What's going on here?" He said, "Why is this mother having to fight to hear a 911 call?" He said, "I hear them all day, every day." So this is the judge that I'm sending this packet to let him see that we waited 12 years to be given the time and location of the call, and it was to Indiana State Police where there wasn't even a recording. And that's what we were going before the judge for, is to hear the call the witness made, and they give us the time and location to Indiana State Police at 1:15, and there's not even a recording.
So it was just a lie.
I mean, this whole thing. Well, Chip Adams, he was quoted in the newspaper one year as saying, Heather's case has been shrouded in secrecy. And that's about the gist of it.
It sounds like it. It's been lost in a lot of secrecy, cover-ups. My mind is still blown.
Oh, I know. I know.
Each time I talk to you, I just am speechless. But like I said, I have enjoyed this time in this interview, this initiation, this introduction, that we've talked about Heather's case. And you're welcome to come on my panel anytime. I actually want to have Lori Page up here, Chris Velo's ex partner. That would be interesting to hear from her.
Yes.
I just got a text message.
Oh, she's more than willing to tell her story because she and her daughters know what he's capable of doing, and there's another missing lady in the area where he lives. So, but because state police are so adamant that it's Marty Deal, I mean that they can't go on with this charade any longer. I mean it's been positively proven that they knew on day 4 that Marty wasn't the man. So I don't know what their next step's going to be.
Their next step is, who knows? So I wish I could tell you, Sarah, but what I do know is that, you know what? Not only God, but the judicial system is on your side.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They know.
Right.
They know what happened, and they know, well, they may not know what happened, but they know that it was something nefarious and scandalous, possibly an injustice, and KSP and all of the people that you have dealt with over the years are complicit.
Absolutely. That is true.
That on my channel, because I know that one interesting thing, ever since I've been talking about Heather's case on my channel, I've had a lot of rogue, mysterious profiles I have not seen here before making elusive threats saying, I know where you're at and I'm outside. And I just tell them, well, you go ahead and step right in, because we have all types of tools and gadgets for you. No, I'm serious. A lot of people, they've ever since I've been talking about this case, I've been receiving comments underneath the videos telling me that I should be careful getting too close to.
Have you?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, a few weeks back, there was people that were coming in the chat. It was someone that I remember the username. It was Lori. Someone that goes by the name of Lori. Now, I don't know if it was Lori. I doubt if it was Lori Page.
Phillips, I'm
sorry. I doubt it was her. But they were telling me, you need to be careful talking about this.
About Heather's case specifically?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I'm not lying. So there's just for the fact, just by that, what I've saw here on YouTube, and I'm an outsider looking into this case, just coming across it, by people saying those things, it further proves that there's something nefarious going on that they don't want you to know. And this whole thing goes a lot deeper, possibly locals here in Owensboro, Henderson.
Oh yeah. That's why I let Miss Dallum know this is all about our hearts and our souls. At the end of every day, they know what they've done. They know what they've done, and it's wrong. If they let their confidential informant get killed on their watch, disappear on their watch, she definitely did that. Whether she staged this or whether they were going to teach her a lesson and then she was accidentally killed, whatever, they know.
It would be nice to think that Heather is still alive out there, but she can't say anything.
No. And like I say, it's 7 years when Holly got that phone call. I was being told, well, that's 7 years into it, so she could have been declared legally deceased after 7 years. Is that why she called? Was that her that called? Who else could it have been? And at the very same time, like I say, somebody was using Heather's not just using Heather's social, but posing as her sister, Holly Teague Perkins. That's what the evidence turned up, is that Holly Teague Perkins was using Heather's social in Newport, Kentucky, when state police knew Holly had just gotten the call and she lived in Madisonville. That's what hit me a couple, months ago, is that, oh my God, did we lead them straight to her when we reported, have they been looking for her this whole time? She disappeared on their watch. Did we lead them to her and now she's not alive anymore? See, that's a possibility too.
Do you know what, you may have mentioned this to me over the phone or here on the podcast, but Was that person ever prosecuted and charged for identity theft? Or was it?
There was no person. It was that they didn't follow through with it. It was, we don't know who was using it. We don't know if it was Heather using Heather's sister Holly's social. I mean, using Heather's social, posing as Holly, because the girl who called Holly was Holly. It was a collect call, and the girl said Holly, which, Holly thought it was Heather by her voice.
It's very cryptic.
No, they've not even tried to find Tammy Storch, the girl I've talked to 2 or 3 Tammy Storches, trying to find out who was living with her at the time. No, and then they end up taking the FBI off that one lead without explaining to me why they would do that when they know. I poured my heart out to them saying, do you even know how this feels to think that Heather could have been alive in 2002? Forget about y'all dropped the ball. Forget all that. Who was posing as Holly using Heather's social? And why would the state police take the one agent off this lead? The only lead we've ever had Heather could be alive. Why would they do that without explaining to me? That's heartless. That was September of 2022. And they've still not messaged me back and let me know something, which leads me to believe that there's a lot more to this, which we know there is.
Yeah, I'm convinced that there is too.
But we got to remember, God's army, I'm telling you, they think this is big. They just don't know the power of a mother's love and people praying. I mean, I've got some people praying that miracles happen.
Any parent will go to the ends of the earth to find their child or find out what happened to their child. And as you guys can hear just by this podcast alone, this introduction to the Heather Teague case, this mother has been through hell and back trying to search for answers, going on 3 decades. And we're going to continue talking about Heather's case. I'm not intimidated by any of these strange individuals that want to come in the chat, making elusive comments.
Did you like screenshot? I want you to send them to me, the names of and what they've said.
I can try to go back. I have to figure out which podcast it was, but there's a live chat replay option on YouTube. So I can go back and screenshot.
But this was about Heather's case? This was specifically?
It was a username. It was Lori something, and she came in the chat, or they came in the chat while we were talking.
Just the one person?
Do what?
Was it just the one person? Yeah.
From my understanding, it was just one person, but this person in particular came into the live stream that we were talking about Heather Teague, and they were saying you better be careful talking about the case. You never know who's watching. I forget exactly what they said, but they said something along the lines of that.
Well, when you told me you were in Owensboro, I knew right then that there would be people that needed to hear this. And, I didn't think that it was the time to do it, which here we are again, God's perfect timing, because I had just been contacted by Miss Dallum, and I didn't want to usurp her authority in any way. I didn't want to, and that's what I keep emailing her, please let me know if what I've submitted is sufficient, and she knows that my main pet peeve, or whatever you call it, is the disrespect that the state police won't even acknowledge I've sent an email. Sometimes I say, would you just please give me one answer today? Would you just give me one answer today?
And you shouldn't have to beg them.
No, I get nothing. I don't even get, Miss Teague, we've received your email. I get nothing. And I have a handwritten fax that I found the other day that I had written to David Osborne, the first lieutenant. And on the cover page, I'm saying, would you please just give me one answer today? Just one. But they're coming, Isaac. Answers are coming.
Well, I appreciate you coming on this morning and speaking with me about the case of your daughter, Sarah.
Thank you. This was good. I'm well pleased. I'm well
I'm
pleased. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
in the next podcast, as soon as we can get everything figured out between me, you, and Lori,
Right.
and so Heidi Black, guys,
Yes.
another
She'll-
YouTuber.
She'll join too. Yes.
Heidi Black is another YouTuber that Sarah has spoken with, and she's spoken with her on multiple different podcasts. She's willing to come on and provide her 2 cents and input because we need as much people as possible. You know, it's not just me and Sarah and Lori. There's a lot of people that us combined, we're stronger together than we are.
Right. Now, is this been live? I mean, you're going to play this?
Yeah, this is live, but it will also be available on the replay as well. So
Okay.
if you want to share it, then you're more than welcome to. You can share any of my content on my channel.
Well, send me the link, and I'll keep the link. Can you put it on Facebook? Are you going to do that?
Yeah, you can put it on Facebook. I can send you the link, and it should take you directly to YouTube.
Okay.
And I'll
Well,
also
you got to go to work, so thank you so much. This is good.
yeah, I'll get off here and get ready for work. But
listen, would you put my my phone number and my email, because there is a $10,000 reward if you could put my email and my phone number out for everybody. I've always done that. I don't care to do it. I don't put my address, but I do put my phone number and my email. And of course, they can reach me on Facebook too. But if they can reach me anonymously, make an anonymous phone call. Tell me where Heather is. Just however they want to do it. There's people that know exactly where Heather is.
Yeah, I can do that. I wanted to ask you first. I didn't want to just put out your contact information, especially phone numbers on the
Definitely
internet.
put my phone number and my email address, and put on there that there is a $10,000 reward.
I'll put that on my community tab, my community little page on YouTube.
Okay. Good deal.
All right.
Thank you, Isaac.
Thank you, Sarah. Y'all have a nice day.
Have a blessed day.
So there you have it, guys. That is the mother of Heather Teague. She went missing in August of 1995. We are continuing to dive deep into her case. If you have enjoyed this type of content, I do invite you to subscribe to the channel. Also, like the video, press the like button, share the content out. Not only for me, but also for Sarah and also for Heather Teague, because this mother is desperate in finding answers. Until the next round, I will catch you, and you have been watching Bandit Network Television.